11:30 in the morning on the southwestern coast of Chile. 7.6 magnitude quake, possibly just deep enough to absorb all of the energy. Ironically, this has occurred in an area, good news that it's sparsely populated, but on a rupture that gave us the world's largest earthquake in 1960 at a magnitude 9.5. So there is some damage that we're getting reports. About 41,000 felt very strong shaking, but nothing in the severe category. Authorities there are saying no fatalities, and that's what the USGS is telling us. We love it when it's green. That means a low impact. But, Michael, there was some damage. And, of course, we're going to continue to see those damage assessments come in, and we'll pass all that information. Of course, what they do right away, line up for petrol.
Not only a very beautiful environment here, but it's also a very quiet environment.
At his home in the rainforest along Canada's Pacific coast, Glenn McPherson researches something that science says shouldn't exist. But it does for him. He hears it every night.
When I first moved here, on my first night after the house quieted down, I was actually taken aback at how loud the hum was.
The worldwide hum is usually described as a low-pitched rumble, like a car or truck engine idling nearby, with electronics pulsing. This is a simulation.
We'll be finding out soon enough whether or not the world hum is as prevalent in Asia as it is in the English-speaking world.
Now, after 4 years, his worldwide hum and database project has found nearly 13,000 people on 5 continents who've emailed to say they're hearing something. The number's too large, McPherson says, to dismiss as hysteria, delusion, or belief in the supernatural.
Given that people arrive at this independently, and now looking at the hum map and looking at the distribution of the geographic distribution and the distribution in age and gender, what these people are reporting is something that is certainly real for them.
This paper from the University of Oklahoma 12 years ago links the sound to a U.S. military program that uses VLF, very low frequency radio, and aircraft to communicate with nuclear submarines underwater. It's the first of 4 explanations that Glenn is pursuing.
Second, the hum is the grand accumulation of human activity, low frequency sound and infrasound. Third, that the hum is a terrestrial geological phenomenon. And fourth, the hum might well be an internally generated phenomenon by the body. Let's just throw this off.
Using a specially built steel box that's supposed to block radio waves, Glenn wants to eliminate all outside sources for the sound. Yet so far the hum is still there, even inside the box. That means new approaches and trying different technology, trying to, as he puts it, give himself and thousands of others around the world the quiet life they deserve.
On a more somber note, over in the Philippines, a powerful typhoon slammed the nation on Christmas Day local time, taking at least 4 lives. 8 others are missing. Typhoon Nocten, also known as Nina by the locals, made landfall on the eastern island province of Catanduanes on Sunday, damaging homes, uprooting trees, and knocking down communication. More than 380,000 people were displaced as the typhoon cut power to 5 provinces at the height of the storm. The storm moved westward on Monday, reaching winds of up to 240 kilometers per hour, according to weather officials. More than 300 flights were delayed or rescheduled, as ferries were also barred from sailing as well.
There's a big sinkhole in a Detroit suburb that has swallowed at least 1 home so far, and it's caused a state of emergency in Fraser. So 24 homes were evacuated after the sinkhole showed up on Saturday, and at least 3 of those homes might end up being condemned. 15-mile road was shut down between Utica and Hayes for what they were thinking would be months. The sinkhole itself, by the way, is about 250 feet long and 100 feet wide. At a town hall meeting, people were assured they would be allowed to go back to their homes soon, that is, if it's safe. They were also warned about potential sewage backup, so other residents were asked to clear their basements in case of flooding while a fix is put in place.
Thousands were still without power in the Dakotas and Michigan after a furious winter storm that swept into the northern Great Plains on Christmas Day weakened Tuesday. But high winds and drifting snow continued to make travel hazardous in the Dakotas, even as vast stretches of highways that had been closed reopened to traffic. The storm also caused extensive power outages. The no travel warning issued Christmas Day for much of North Dakota had largely expired by Tuesday, although the National Weather Service warned that drifting snow still blocked some roads.
Right now, a powerful rainstorm in Australia causing flash floods, closing the park where tourists come from all over the world to see the Ayers Rock landmark. Record rain also creating an indelible scene at the park, a series of waterfalls transforming that desert region as streams of water were pouring from the mountaintop. Rare and cool.
The New York Times says fake news caused a tense exchange between nuclear powers Pakistan and Israel. Pakistan's foreign minister sent out a tweet on Friday, apparently responding to a false story that Israel had threatened to use its nuclear arsenal. The tweet reminded Israel of Pakistan's nuclear weapons. Tony DeCopel is here with the growing concern of the potential real danger of made-up news and the power of a tweet. Tony, good morning.
Good morning. It all started with a fake news article, but then came the tweet from Pakistan's defense minister, both alluding to the use of nuclear force. And this is not the first instance of fake information, creating a very real controversy. This article, published last week by the website awdnews.com, falsely quoted a former top Israeli official, saying his country would destroy Pakistan with a nuclear attack. In an apparent response, Pakistan's defense minister tweeted, "Israel forgets Pakistan is a nuclear state too." The Israeli Ministry of Defense quickly moved to dismiss the claim, tweeting back, "Reports referred to by the Pakistani defense minister are entirely false."
India has successfully conducted a fourth test launch of its nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missile. The Agni 5 missile was launched from a site of the east coast on Monday. It's over 70 meters tall and uses solid fuel. It has 3 stages and a launch weight of 50 tons with a range of more than 5,000 kilometers.
Police are investigating a string of fights that broke out in malls across the country. The brawls happened yesterday during the post-Christmas rush on one of the busiest shopping days of the year. Look at that video. There were reports of fights in more than a dozen cities from Elizabeth, New Jersey to Fort Worth, Texas. In some cases, police responded to reports of gunfire. Jerika Duncan is here with what led to the violence. Jerika, good morning.
Good morning, Vlad. Police believe in some situations, postings on social media may have drawn attention to the fights Monday night. But while they all happened within a few hours of each other, it's still unclear whether they happened by chance or were planned. Dozens of police officers rushed in to respond to this fight at the Fox Valley Mall outside of Chicago. Confused and panicked shoppers scrambled for building exits. Police say nearly 1,000 teens gathered at the mall before the brawl started around 6:30 last night. The mall closed for over an hour. At a shopping center in Elizabeth, New Jersey, officers armed with long rifles and riot shields searched the food court. Someone apparently shouted "gun" after a chair slammed. Hundreds ran for the exits. Video shows corridors choked as shoppers tried to get out. At least 8 people were injured. In Fort Worth, Texas, officers responded to reports of an active shooter, although it turned out there was no gunman.
Anytime that we're hearing a mall shooting and it's the day after Christmas, you have tons of people, holiday shopping. Of course, the response is going to be just like that. We're going to get in here as fast as we can.
Police are still unsure about why nearly a dozen brawls happened around the country. In at least one situation, authorities say social media may have played a role.
Running, screaming, I seen a girl get trampled over. It was scary. It was really scary for real.
At Beechwood Place Mall in Ohio, the mall was placed on lockdown and officers used pepper spray to disperse a large crowd after a fight.
So we didn't know what was going on, but at that point we had just pulled everyone into the shop, to make sure that they were safe and make sure that we could at least contain it a little bit.
Well, President-elect Donald Trump shocked the world when he defeated Hillary Clinton last month. Now he says that he would have beaten President Obama. The president said in an interview that he could have defeated Mr. Trump if he'd been able to run for a 3rd term. He said that his hope and change message would have resonated again with voters.
The president-elect fired back on Twitter, writing, "There's no way he would have lost." Mr. Trump wrote in a follow-up tweet, "The world was gloomy before I won. There was no hope." Juliana Goldman looks at the growing discord in the transition. Juliana, good morning.
Good morning. Well, it was just about a couple of months ago that President Obama pledged to make President-elect Trump's transition to the White House as easy as possible. But ever since the two met in the Oval Office after the election, the president and his successor have publicly veered between playing nice and throwing punches.
If you think you're winning, then you have a tendency, just like in sports, maybe to play it safer.
While admitting to Monday morning quarterbacking, President Obama told David Axelrod on his podcast that Hillary Clinton underestimated working-class America. The president said he would have been able to beat Donald Trump with a message of diversity and tolerance.
If I had run again and articulated it, I think I could have mobilized a majority of the American people to rally behind it. There is a sense, obviously, that some communities have been left behind from the recovery, and people feeling anxious about that. I think she looked and said, well, given my opponent and the things he's saying and what he's doing, we should focus on that.
In response, Mr. Trump tweeted, President Obama said that he thinks he would have won against me. He should say that, but I say no way.
If you succeed, then the country succeeds.
After their Oval Office meeting last month, Mr. Trump said there are pieces of Obamacare that he'd like to keep.
I have asked him what he would think of this one and that one.
Earlier this month, he said he's consulted the president on cabinet picks.
I will always make myself available to him, just as previous presidents have made themselves available to me as issues come up.
But on foreign affairs,
since there's only one president at a time,
the two have been less diplomatic.
What I've advised the president-elect is that across the board on foreign policy, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a systematic, deliberate, intentional way.
As the president acknowledged, he warned Russian President Vladimir Putin about meddling in the U.S. election. Mr. Trump tweeted, if Russia or some other entity was hacking, why did the White House wait so long to act? Why did they only complain after Hillary lost? And just this week, Mr. Trump criticized the administration for abstaining from the United Nations Security Council resolution condemning Israeli settlements in the West Bank, tweeting, as to the UN, things will be different after January 20th.
A former North Korean diplomat says Kim Jong-un is racing to develop nuclear weapons by the end of 2017 and plans to accomplish that goal at any cost. Our CNN's Saima Mawson has more from Seoul.
Suzanne, this information's coming from one of the highest-ranking diplomatic defectors from North to South Korea in history. Tae Yong-ho was Pyongyang's deputy ambassador to London. And crucially, that means he is a man in the know. He has information that many analysts suspected, but few could actually confirm. Now, he was speaking to South Korean media here in Seoul for the first time since he made his escape, saying what you just said about North Korea's nuclear development. And I want to read you this quote. He says that as long as Kim Jong-un is in power, North Korea will never, ever give up its nuclear weapons. And he goes on, the North will not give them up, even if the country's offered $1 trillion or $10 trillion in return. It's not a matter of economic incentives, which a lot of analysts have said before. Offer them money and maybe they'll change their mind. Now, 2017, why 2017? Well, crucially, Suzanne, according to this defector, Kim Jong-un has carefully calculated that that's when President-elect Trump should be in the White House and there should be a new president here in Seoul. And he believes the new administration's hands will be tied to take any kind of military actions to stop North Korea's development of its nuclear weapons. He's really calculating this now, and apparently he wants to be a nuclear state before Pyongyang approaches Washington, D.C. and Seoul to open up some kind of dialogue. Now, until then, this defector also says it will carry on with its nuclear tests, its military drills that we've been seeing recently, and that is an intention to try and reverse the UN sanctions, that kind of policy that's towards North Korea. He will continue until he is a nuclear state, and then he'll come to the table. Now, this defector is currently under South Korean government protection with his family. He defected in the summer, and he says he's determined to dismantle Kim Jong-un's regime and save his people from approaching nuclear disaster. Suzanne?